Welcome to Perspectives, a quarterly webinar hosted by Ministries. My name is Rebecca Wall, and I have the privilege of serving as the Executive Director of WIT. This year, we're focusing on stories of people and families of people impacted by disability. Why? Because stories increase our empathy and they make the work that we do together stronger. Today, we'll be talking to Kim and David Roosevelt about their experience with the church, their hopes and dreams for their daughter Caroline, and what they see as witness for the church. I'm so excited for you to hear their perspective and their insights because these people are my people. I've had the privilege of knowing their family for over 13 years when I first served with their daughter Caroline on Sundays. They have since become family to me, and Caroline's friendship has deeply, deeply shaped who I am today. The Roosevelts, Kim and David, right here, I have been shaped by witnessing them love their daughters fiercely, to advocate with all that they have, to educate by their example of their lives, and authentically live out what witness means to us. So Roosevelts, have fun following that lead in. But I would love to hear a little bit about you guys, your family, and what your church experience has been like thus far.
Well, I'll start. So Kim and David, we've lived in Dallas for and Caroline, I think Caroline's going to come up.
This is the time. We need her here.
So we have Caroline, who's 21, and we have Elizabeth, who is 22. I don't know if you can hear Caroline in the background.
She likes to be a part of it, and she has a boyfriend, Joshua, that she wants.
She has a boyfriend, Joshua. Here's the deal. It doesn't bother me if we hear Caroline in the background. So we'll keep rocking and rolling.
Honey, thoughts?
So, like David said, we have lived in Dallas now for almost 15, 16 years. Caroline was born. So when we were actually pregnant with Elizabeth, we were told that she might have some markers for Down syndrome. We prayed about it. We thought, if this is the Lord's plan, this is the Lord's plan. And we opted not to do anything. And she was born totally typically normal. And then 18 months later, we were pregnant with Caroline. And I asked if she had any markers for Down syndrome. Of course, there wasn't a single one. So it was a complete surprise when she was born. And it has been one of the greatest blessings in our life to have her. She truly is our joy factory. She makes us laugh. She makes us love. And, I believe in all my heart that what Scripture says is true, that she is perfectly, wonderfully made. She was not hidden when she was in my womb from the Lord. And so I love what she brings to our family. I feel like she has fulfilled our family. And she is a real gift. And so we have taken her everywhere we would take any of our kids. She's been a part of our life, whether that's church or independent life, vacations, all that stuff. Caroline's just been a part of what we have done. And for the most part, we have been incredibly blessed that the church really has come around us. And I know that's not the case for many people. And I think that's because we didn't really give them a choice, quite frankly. I think we just took her and they found a way to make her fit. Even, whether it was we go to a very large mega church in Dallas or a small church in Michigan in the summers, she just came along with us. And so she has been very adaptable, which I think has been helpful. But we've just made her part of our lives. And so anything you want to add, honey?
No, I thought you said it beautifully. I'd also say she's our barrier breaker. She's full of love. Kim said it. She's our joy factory. And we feel like we won the lottery.
She is the best. And watching y'all parent Caroline is a joy. I think something that you said, y'all just made it happen. Wherever you went, you've not stopped life because she has a disability. You've not given up hopes of having a church community because she has Down syndrome. But she's just gone with you everywhere. And so our organization, obviously being named WITH, we believe, and as your family's experience, like we truly are better when we are with one another in community, and not making separate spaces or not giving up on hopes and dreams just because of disability. And so we'd love to hear y'all kind of share just what your hopes in church or outside of church, just what witness means to you and where you've seen that kind of play out in your life in a really beautiful way.
to me, my ultimate hope for Caroline is that she can live the most meaningful, inclusive life that she's capable of doing. And that's true whether it's through education, whether it's through employment, or whether it's through church. I want her to have the same opportunities that our other daughter has. Now, they may look a little different, and we may need to modify some stuff, but I want her to be included in everything. We were fortunate as we were coming through the church. One of the things, when it got to middle school ages, we signed her up for a small group like we did for our other daughter. And they were amazing. They actually, they included her in the small group. They actually assigned her a special buddy. The reality was, it turned out she didn't really need the special buddy, but she was a part of what they did. She was a part of the prayer. She opened oftentimes in prayers. We hosted the event at our home. We wanted to be treated like every other family was being treated. And we've seen that continue, long term at the church. Our hope, we're fortunate that we're at a church that now they have started doing an adult ministry. And that looks different than they recognize that what works for young kids doesn't always necessarily work for older kids. And quite frankly, it's harder as they become adults because when they're young, Mom, sorry, we have a little
1 second.
Oh, it's never dull at our house.
It's never dull.
No, nothing ever goes quite as planned, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So as she is aged, it's harder, and I see that. I actually work full-time for an organization where we serve adults with intellectual disabilities, and when they're younger and everyone's learning things, it's often there's more opportunities for them to be included. It's when they grow up, and it's a little bit more challenging because they can't go to the same necessarily Sunday schools that you could do when you were younger. They can't go to the same programmings, and so churches really do need to adapt to that. And I've seen the way that they're doing it at our church is that now all these adults go and they worship together. And so we are worshiping with them, not separately from them, but they come into the main sanctuary. It's been a incredible blessing to me this past year as we're sitting behind the ASL interpreters. And so I've watched this young woman who not only is deaf, but has cerebral palsy and get up and sign. And her signs are not perfect, but it is perfect to the Lord. What we see as imperfections, it is just beautiful to worship with all of these people together. And so we hope that she'll continue to get to worship with us. She'll learn to serve. That's one of the things that they're going to start next month. We're super excited about.
Yay.
On the front lines team, and there is no greater greeter. I can tell Caroline Roosevelt. Becca knows this so well because you all actually greeted before.
Yes.
For an opportunity.
We have done high kicks as people come into church. I mean, there's nothing more exciting than that.
Let me just add a couple things you said. So I think inclusivity can look different in different situations and in different environments. One of the things that I think had debates regarding early on is what inclusivity looks like, what we want for Caroline. And, do we want her to go into a typical school with typical kids? And like today, she goes to a school called Notre Dame, which is a school in North Dallas that serves about 180 kids like Caroline from like 65 or 70 different zip codes. And it's been incredible. And that population, they love being together. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to make the point, it looks different ways in different, I think, situations. I don't know if you want to comment on that at all.
Well, I do think there's a time and place sometimes for adults with disabilities to learn the skills separately from everyone else that they need. But there's also a time we want them to have as inclusive, meaningful lives as they possibly can. And so there are certainly avenues that David's talking about. I think for educational purposes, sometimes it really is good to pull them apart because they need to be educated differently. But the whole purpose of that education is so that they can live meaningful, inclusive lives. And so the reality is Caroline maybe having a different education approach is what has led her to be able to come to Watermark and to be able to come to church and sit through the service and do everything else because she's been taught those skills in a way that's understandable to her.
Great points. One other just kind of thought I should have mentioned at the very beginning. I mentioned that Caroline is a barrier breaker. I would say one of the other things, just the blessings and gift of having a child with, now she's not a child, she's an adult, with special needs is I feel like for the vast majority of interactions that Caroline has had with strangers that we are a part of it has been, it's allowed us to see, to a certain extent, the best in humanity.
Mm-hmm.
I can remember we were in New York City. Caroline had to go to the bathroom. We were outside. We go into a restaurant or like a Starbucks, and there's a long line. And somebody who didn't know us from Adam, totally different backgrounds, is like, does she need to go to the bathroom? She's first in line. And I mean, just we get to see things like that all the time. And in this, to a certain extent, polarized world we live in, Caroline just allows us to break all those barriers and just see the best in everybody.
I think I found in spaces where people are with one another and people have the opportunity to be together, whether to be in a line or at church, but just seeing it brings out the best of people, because we're forced to think outside of ourselves and forced to see someone and elevate their humanity over our own for a second. And people with disabilities break down those walls and allow us to really engage authentically. I think a lot of times we are too afraid to be silly or too afraid to relax or to walk slower or maybe dance. Like David, I know you've got your dance moves, but people with disabilities sometimes just break down those facades that we put up and allow us to be authentically who we are. And Caroline is one of the best, the best at doing that. Since y'all have been worshiping with Caroline in big church, as I call it, into the main worship service with other adults with disabilities, have y'all seen anything shift in the people that sit around y'all, or people making comments about what a gift it is to worship with her? I know I've gotten to experience that when I worship next to her, of people saying, like it's a delight to hear her shout out to the Lord. But what has that been like? Has anything felt different since they've been present in the service?
I think it's been a real gift, because I think Caroline is not shy about her love for Jesus and her love for the Lord. And honestly, whether it's secular music or it's praise worship music, she is giving it 100% of who she is and 100% of herself. And so we have met so many new people because of Caroline. She's a barrier breaker. And when they see her worship, they are blessed by it. And we've had so many people come and tell us that they're blessed by it. I think the biggest reason that people are not with disabilities are not included in the church all the time is people are scared. They just don't know. We're all a little bit intimidated by something we're not familiar with and we're not comfortable with. And so I think having her in the church has let people see that they don't have to be any different. She's just like the rest of us. She wants to be included. She wants to be a part of it. She wants to feel like she has purpose and meaning. She is no different than any of us. And so I really encourage families who have adults or children and adults both with disabilities to take them to church, take them to the regular service. Don't be afraid to look different. It's okay to be different. I mean, God created us for a purpose, for us to all be different. And we all have different gifts that we can use to praise Him.
Yeah, I think it is. I think a lot of families, I think families with kids with disabilities or adults with disabilities are afraid of what the reality could look like in big service. I think people in big service are worried about, oh gosh, is it going to be louder or noisier or distracting? But I think it's risky on both ends to do what I think is faithful, and that's to bring God's people together to worship Him. And I think Caroline's a phenomenal example of that. You talked about Caroline starting to serve. What do you see as her spiritual gifts? She is made in the image of God. She has the Holy Spirit with her. She's professed faith, and I know she has lots of gifts to give. Where do you picture her over the next decades of her life? How do you see her serving her community?
She is an incredible greeter, like to bring people into church, to welcome them. The nice thing is having Caroline at the forefront, it's going to break down any barrier. Whatever people are going through, whatever they're struggling with, when they see Caroline, it's like she just reminds you of what's important in life. And so I definitely think she needs to serve on the front lines teams. I also think she's capable of, she loves to serve us at home. When we're at home, she loves to welcome people into our home. She loves to set the table. She loves to serve them food. She loves to give them drinks. And so
she likes to do laundry.
I heard
laundry at church. They have a need for that.
He's like, let me tell you my gifts, people. I can tell you from afar.
She's very good at the laundry.
She likes to clean. She is so gifted. There are so many places that she could serve. You know, I mentioned, Becca, that I work for an organization where we train adults to work in vocational skills. And what we find is there's really not a place where adults with disabilities cannot be. We just may need to modify what we expect from them. And honestly, usually if you have a job that's 100%, they can probably do 98% of it or 95%. But if we tweak everything, there is not a place that Caroline should not be able to serve, quite honestly, in the church. If she's given the right support to do so, and maybe a few modifications.
Yeah,
so she certainly has the gift of hospitality.
100%.
She, as Kim said, will be incredible as a greeter. One of the things I've observed, just the school that she goes to, they go to a company called I think I can mention it, Avara, which is we've seen
women's retail online shop.
And we've seen videos of Caroline working at Avara, doing what would you call what they're doing?
When Avara orders their clothes, they will take them out of the package, they will steam them, they will cut off labels, they will add labels. She is capable of doing administrative type work. She really is capable of, she cleans at another place that she goes to. She's capable of doing anything else that everyone else in the church serves. Just a little bit different way.
Yeah, one of the things that's amazing about this population, obviously Caroline is an incredible greeter. I think you've gotten that, but they transform in a positive way the environments that people are willing to include them into. Those environments have a much greater sense of empathy, patience, kindness, joy. Just including this population. And this population, and when I say this population, I don't mean just Down syndrome, but just across the spectrum, lots of different diagnoses. People just have to give them a chance. Just a few other things about this population from an administrative perspective that I've learned from Kim and what her work does. This population can do jobs that what I would call a neurotypical person can't do. And what do I mean by that? A neurotypical person gets bored after a month of doing repetitive type tasks. Their quality goes down dramatically. Their pride in their work goes down dramatically. They just can't get out of there. This population, incredibly high quality, no turnover. So there are just a lot of wonderful things about this population if they are incorporated constructively into various work and other types of environments.
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on right there. And I think you use the word transform, which is a word we use a lot around here, is just we really do see churches transformed when they are proactively modifying, creating space, warmly welcoming and ushering people of all abilities into the church community. And it really does transform everything. And I know y'all have gotten to see that happen and play out in Michigan and in Texas and in your church communities and your family and friends. It makes everything better. I would love to hear a little bit. So just as Caroline is aging, so as let's say boys, she loves boys. She
likes boys. Yeah.
I personally see her. I would love for her to serve in kids. She is the best with kids. As she's amazing. But as she ages, so she's 21 now. Let's say fast forward, Caroline's 41. What would you picture? What would you dream for her?
Go ahead, honey.
I mean, hopefully I'll still be with her, hanging. We'll all be around.
For Caroline, I'm going to think about this, Becca. This is a hard question. I hope she is living a full, meaningful life. And I'm not exactly sure exactly what that will look for her. I hope she has a wonderful place to go on a daily basis. I hope she has a job because I think she has the ability to contribute to society. I hope she is super involved in her church. I would love to see her. She actually does go once a month to a Bible study that's for adults with disabilities at a local church, and I would love to see her continue to be involved there. She may live independently of us. She may not, and it's okay, whichever one the Lord has planned. But I want her to feel like she has a purpose and she is living out the plan that God has for her life.
Yeah. I think I don't want to project this challenge on y'all, but I think what becomes challenging as people age, and for adults specific, I mean teenagers too, I'm sure y'all experience this too, but just community and friendships within the church, where you have a team of people rallying around at you at church that are present with you each and every day. I do as well. I long for that for Caroline. And I hope that becomes more and more of a story, that she's going to be surrounded by people that are worshiping next to her on Sundays, all the days of her life, not just people with disabilities, because that's where she's been, but that there would be people that are neurotypical, like David said, that will enter in and really be that support system. I've watched that transform families' lives, to know that they're, as parents are aging, to know that their adult that is aging has genuine friendships outside of the church or inside of the church, outside of their family unit. And I hope that, I'm like, if I could have a hope for Caroline, it's that she would be a part of a community group like you are and like I am, with people with and without disabilities. So she's fully known and supported within the church, because I think that's what we're called to do, is love one another deeply. And what does that look like for her as she ages?
And that is probably the one thing that she does not currently have. We have it outside the church, whether it's through Young Life Capernaum or through another church. But at our church, she is part of our community group right now. And thankfully, our community group is really great, including everything. Yay! But there will, she loves them. They love her. But I think you're right. At some point, it would be nice for her to have that sense of her own community group and have some independence outside of us. There may be things she doesn't want to say in front of mom and dad.
Yeah.
Like all of our children. So we don't.
Y'all are as cool as they come, but you're still her parents, She's gotta have her peers. No, y'all are the best. And I love y'all's community group, and love that she loves y'all's community group. What is one thing that you wish people understood? We've kind of probably touched on some of this, but what is one thing you wish people understood about the disability community, or how significant the church has played a role? Y'all have had such a great experience, but what do you wish people knew? If a pastor's listening that knows nothing or is afraid right now to open the doors wide for all people to be in his church, what do you wish he could know because of what it's done for y'all?
Well, you talked about the word transform. Mm-hmm. Having a daughter with special needs has positively transformed our lives. Mm-hmm. It's just been amazing. I think I said earlier that I think we didn't necessarily feel this way in the operating room. They told us what they thought the diagnosis was, but we have learned as we've embraced it that this is the greatest blessing we could have ever asked for. Mm-hmm. And what's sad is that a lot of the world doesn't believe that. Or I'd say probably the majority of the world doesn't believe that. So I would just say, open up your heart and expect that God is going to do incredible things with your willingness to embrace this community and embrace the families that are a part of this community, because it is awesome if you do so.
Yeah, I would just say you don't know what you're missing out on. You are missing out on a beautiful population that the Lord has created uniquely and specially for a purpose. And there is a purpose why Caroline is exactly the way she is. And spend time with people like Caroline. Get to know them. It can be scary at first, but they're just like the rest of us. They just want to feel included and valued and a sense of purpose, and they want to belong. They want to be with us. As our ministry says, that is what they want. They want to be with us.
Yeah, I have a friend the other day that just said, like, I don't know why I have to be away. I want to be with. Like, I don't know why I have to go to this separate building. I just want to be with everybody else. And so the call to witness it's a big call and it's a big ask, but I think it's a biblical ask and a biblical call for a faithful church. And so we really do hope to come alongside more and more churches in their journey to becoming a church of witness. Roosevelt's, before we get out of here, what is one tip or piece of advice? It can be for a family that has a child with Down syndrome. It could be for somebody at Starbucks that sees you. It could be for me or for our organization. What is one tip of advice that you would like for people to know about being more inclusive?
I'm going to speak to the moms out there because I remember when Caroline was younger, I would worry so much about what other people thought. She was at an inclusive dance studio, for example, and I would be so worried that the other moms would notice that maybe she wasn't participating fully, maybe she was doing that. And I realized that the Lord had to work on me. And he said, you know what, Kim, trust me. I have a plan and a purpose. And this is not about you. It's not about your pride. It's not about any of that. Just let me do my work. And so I just think we worry too much about what other people think. And we need to just worry about what the Lord thinks.
Nothing to add to that. I put myself in the same category. Worried way too much about what others thought. And that's human nature. So I just say, if that's what other parents on this who watch this podcast feel or think, I would just say, pray and pray about it and go to. Fortunately, this isn't a small community, so I'd say go get to know others within it.
Yeah, one in three families and households. So it is present in our communities. I tell people all the time, I think Caroline's a great example of this. I feel like people with disabilities live like the most authentic, free, and full life as God intended. I'm the one that puts up the barriers or avoids or cares too much about what people think, but she is living exactly how God created her, and it is beautiful. And it is honestly a challenge to me every time I'm around her, just to live more freely as God created me and not to be so worried about who I am or what I'm projecting. So I love that advice, Kim and David. Thank y'all. Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing with us from your beautiful experience and your perspective as of being a parent and a follower of Jesus, and your hopes for Caroline as she ages in the church. And I definitely think we say stories increase our empathy, and the impact that we do together grows only because we know more. And so I hope today's episode, for those of you listening and watching, encourages you to get to know somebody new with disabilities. Find the leaders in your church and ask what you can do to be a part of transforming your church and bringing people with disabilities closer into the body with the rest of everybody. If you'd like to learn more or stay connected about With Ministries and the offerings that we have for churches, head on over to withministries.org. And until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and keep connecting.
And let me see if Caroline's willing to come over and say hi. Caroline, you want to come say hi real quick? Well, then
tell her we're done with the big series.
We're done with the big video. Come on.
She's busy.
Well, she's busy on her iPad.
Caroline.
Come on, little buddy.
Caroline, come say hi to Becca.
Hi.
Here we go.
Will you at least come wave?
Caroline, say hi to Becca.
Hi.
Hey, girl, I didn't know you were right there. I love you.